Today, we're interviewing Donna Frazer, which is absolutely fantastic. She is a four-time Olympian, and she specialises in 400, 200 and 100 metres. She's actually, her career's actually spanned over 20 years. She's got a history of 20 years of representing Great Britain, and probably further beyond in terms of coaching, which she might tell you all about. And she's also a breast cancer ambassador, so something that she wants to mention as well. So as an inspirational speaker, we are very, very honoured that she's joined us today. And I think we're going to begin with a little an overview, Donna, if that's all right, of your career, where you started, and yeah, what your journey was along the way, please.
Sure, thank you, Anna. So hi everyone, I have said hello to everyone individually. Great to be on this call with everyone. It's one of my passions to inspire the next generation of sports stars, no matter what it is. I prefer you to get into athletics, obviously, because that's my passion. And as mentioned before, my career spanned over 20 plus years, which is a bit of a long time. You don't see that when you're in it, but when you're eventually called the grandma of athletics, you realise how long you've been in the sport. For me, my career started way back. I was 8 years old and at primary school, so I know Isaiah is in primary school, so you can understand and what it's like to be at primary school. So much fun and games and enjoyment. And it was my primary school teacher who introduced athletics to me, and being selected to represent my primary school at the local schools athletics championships was an honour. I was absolutely nervous at the age of 8, being the youngest in the team, but we had such a great team effort amongst my primary school. It was just a girls' school as well, so they felt like my older sisters who looked after me. My older sister was into athletics. There's a 10-year age gap between myself and her, and she loved athletics. So she was hugely supportive of what I wanted to do. But coming from a West Indian background, athletics wasn't the thing that was going to pay the bills. So when I was approached by my local athletics club to join the club, I was thinking, how on earth am I going to convince my parents to let me join this club? But I wanted to do it, and this is where having older siblings really does help. My sister convinced my parents to let me go and join the club, and the rest is history almost. When I turned up on a cold evening at the athletics track in Croydon to see so many other kids doing what I wanted to do, and that was to get to an Olympic Games, I was absolutely over the moon. Being the shy person that I was, this was an opportunity for me to come out of my shell, which it absolutely did, because I was around people that were doing what I wanted to do. So I'm going to fast forward. I'll try and fit 20 years of my career into 10 minutes as much as I can. I went to English Schools Championships. So what that is you represent your county. So I was in the county of Surrey. Back then I was doing the 200 metres. My first 200 metres representing Surrey at the English schools happened in 1986, way before you were all dreamt to be born. And I won my first English schools championships. And 5 years later, I competed again for Surrey and won 6 consecutive titles over the 200 metres for Surrey. And I believe I'm still in the record books for that with another athlete, which is a rarity, being able to win every single year for 6 years. But of course, at that age, my sights were still set on getting to an Olympic Games. And you see it on TV. 1984 Olympics was something that I was glued to watching, just seeing the sea of colours, the different countries competing against each other, athletes giving their best, their 100% effort, was just amazing and appealing to myself. But I had a few more stepping stones to get through and step on before I got to the Olympic Games. So I eventually started to not do as well as I wanted to over 200 metres. And someone within the club said to me, Donna, why don't you try the 400 meters. Now, to me, 400 meters at the time seemed a very long way. You're starting at the start and you have to go all the way around the track and finish where you started. That just seemed quite far for me. But as usual, my sister, being my confidant and inspiring me to do well, she says, you know, you've done the 200 meters before, jog the first 200 and then sprint as fast as you can the last 200. And that's exactly what I did. And I won the 400 meters, my first one that I'd stepped foot on the track to do. And the rest was just literally, I had to think about training, upping my training sessions, working a lot harder than I did as a 100 and 200 meter athlete. So what came round pretty quickly was the European Junior Championships in 1991. And going into those championships, I was selected to represent Great Britain. That was obviously a great achievement, to be able to put on a GB vest. And I turned up in Greece, where the European Championships were taking place, not highly ranked, not expected to even get to the final, let alone a medal. And I got through the rounds, and sooner or later, a few days in, I was on the start line in the final of the European Junior Championships. So I always say this, the night before those championships, my teammate said to me, Donna, you know, what are you going to do tomorrow? How are you going to approach your race? And I says, well, I think I've done the hard work, and that was getting to the final. Now it's up to whoever wants it the most. So myself and 7 other athletes from the various countries. So when that gun went off, I was going, and my rival in that particular race was a German girl, and she was just going for it. First 200, she was way ahead. And those are the days where you didn't really have TV cameras around as much as you do now. So I had no idea where my position was. But coming round the last bend, I could see I had her in my sights, and I was just going for it. Crossed the line literally with my eyes closed, and looked across, and I just saw the sea of Union Jacks flying. I'd won the European Junior Championships, which no one had expected me to do. And that was definitely a lesson learned for me, is that despite your critics, you can never have that self-doubt. I believed that I could win that race, and I did, despite what everyone thought I would do. No one knew I'd get a medal. So that was the last year of being a junior, and the next step was to be in the seniors. And of course, that's almost starting right at the bottom of the ladder again. And I knew I had to work a lot harder to try and make a name as a senior athlete. So when I got the letter and call up to represent England at the Commonwealth Games as a senior, just for the relay, not the individual, just for the relay, I was absolutely over the moon. But of course, the relays are right at the end of the program. So you can imagine I was waiting painfully for the relays to start. So the day of the relays, you turn up at the track, ready to warm up with your other teammates. And I was told that I wasn't going to be running. So you can imagine that devastating news, that long wait, and then being told that you're not going to get a run. I was absolutely devastated. So it was that point that I really made a promise to myself that I'd never ever be selected to represent Great Britain or England and not step foot on the track. So when I returned back from Canada from the Commonwealth Games, I changed training groups, I worked hard, I did everything possible, looked at my diet, rest, how much I slept, and obviously I had to fit in my schoolwork at the same time, getting that time management balance right, just so that I could get to the next step, which was the Olympic Games, the goal that I set way back when I was 8 years old. So fast forward again another 2 years, when I got that letter that said, Donna Frazer, you've been selected to represent Great Britain and Northern Ireland in the Olympic Games in Atlanta, not just for the relay, but for the individual. I was true to my promise. I was able to get my vest on, GB vest, be proud of that, but also I knew I'd be getting a run. Even if I got knocked out in the heats, I was definitely going to get a run. So, of course, got to Atlanta, and that was an experience in itself, second to none. It's everything that you see on TV about the Olympic Games, the friendships and all the values that sit around Olympics and Paralympics is there. Respect, friendship, equality, everything is just there. But you get the opportunity to be around athletes that you see on TV in that athlete's village, just like any other athlete. But it's almost a shock that you're sat next to a champion tennis player in the dining room, and being able to converse with them just as if you were friends was just an experience that I could never, ever want to change, but I'll always remember and hold close to my heart. So, of course, Olympic Games came round. I was out there ready to run. And in those days, we had 4 rounds of the 400 meters. So you'd have your heats, your second round, semi-final, and the final. And I only got to the second round. But what I did come away with were 2 things, actually. One being the Olympic and Paralympic values, and also a personal best. So I couldn't really argue or be upset with myself, because I gave 110% and came away with a personal best. I did my absolute best at that time when it matters, which was at the Olympic Games. But it also gave me that mindset of how to prepare, because I was around the likes of Linford Christie, Sally Gunn, all those sporting greats of my era that have done it and got medals, and I learnt so much from them. So again, fast forward to now, I've been to 4 Olympic Games, the last one being in 2008. Unfortunately, I didn't make it in 2012. That's the one Olympic Games I would have loved to have gone to. You all would have seen that on TV, being in London. What a spectacle that was. But I'm lucky enough now to be working in athletics. I'm the Equality, Diversity and Engagement Lead for UK Athletics, British Athletics, whichever one you want to call it. It's the same organisation. And yes, it's nice to know that I'm able to give something back to the sport that I love. So I have my fingers in so many different pies. It's been mentioned I'm a breast cancer now ambassador. That's because I went through that experience myself, and as a Black woman as well, we don't often talk about the C word. So I feel it's my duty to talk about my experience and inspire other people who are going through similar things that I have also. I also sit on the Sport Honours Committee. So when you see the Queen giving out those MBEs and OBEs, I sit on the Sports Committee for that. So I'm always encouraging people to nominate as many people as you think deserve to get an honour and be recognised for the great work that they do in sport and in their own communities. And I also am a vice chair for British Athletes Commission. So that looks after the welfare of athletes across sports, not just athletics. And I do all sorts of other things that keeps me out of trouble. But fundamentally, I think while I'm on this earth, I have a duty as a former athlete to give something back and inspire the next generation. So that's me in a nutshell.
What an amazing story. Thank you so much. I'm just going to move these questions across so that I can see them. So Jeremiah has asked a question. My question is, what was the experience like when you achieved the 200 meters and 400 meters double at the AAA Championships? Nice question.
Wow, you've done your research. Well, my coach was a little eccentric. I'd always say that I was his guinea pig to try things out. It always took me a while to warm up into races, and it was a big ask. You know, the championships are over 2 days, and having to fit in 6 races in 2 days can be quite daunting on the body. I was very, very lucky that one of the rounds was taken out of the 400 meters. We only had heat and final, but we did have 3 rounds of the 200. And I loved it. It was great weather that weekend, and I just thrive on that competitiveness from my other rivals as well. And when I did get the double, I was absolutely over the moon, but at the same time extremely tired. But it's an achievement that hadn't been done since 1945. So when you're hearing those kind of stats, it really, I'm honoured to actually have been able to achieve that. it was a big ask, and I have to thank the officials for getting me through that day, because I didn't have to go through the call room. And if you know about the call room, you have to go through a certain process before you actually go and compete. They actually allowed me to stay after one of my races, just stay there and get taken round to the start. So I didn't have to go through that whole process. So that's the importance of having a great support network around you to succeed.
Fantastic, thank you. And Pia has pulled up your mention of being careful about your diet. So if you give us an example of, you know, how you were very careful about what you ate, what kind of things you ate when you were training.
Yeah, definitely. So my parents are quite healthy anyway, so I always had my 3 meals a day, and of course at school as well. I know junk food is out there, you know, all of us, even as an elite athlete, we know that. But what my coach did when I was at that elite level, he'd always put one day aside as a treat day. And, you know, all the other days we'd make sure we were eating healthy, drinking and staying hydrated all the time. We'd always have to have a water bottle with us, whether we're training, watching TV, whatever. So you're constantly hydrated. But our treat days, honest, hand on heart, when those treat days came round, we didn't want all the junk food and the sweets, because our body was so in tune to eating healthily. And I always describe athletes as cars, as vehicles. You know, without petrol or diesel, you can't maneuver a car. So we're like machines. Like, you don't even have to be an athlete. Anyone, you have to refuel. You have to keep your body hydrated. What you put in, you will get out. Is healthy for your mind and also for your body. So nutrition was a big deal for us. Throughout my career, I had a number of nutritionists out there that would give me different diets, and what I found, I was either losing too much weight or putting on too much weight. And of course, for 400 meters, you can't have too much weight. It's a long way to carry a lot of excess weight. So what I did is I stripped that all back and looked at what worked for me, what was my race weight, and then eat accordingly to that. So I wouldn't have any carbohydrates in the evening. I'd have that after training or before training, and then just have mainly protein in the evening.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jade has asked a question quite similar, but what was your daily habit that you think helped you succeed? So it might have been a bit superstitious, or, you know, that kind of thing, but, you know, it might have just been eating at a precise time. I don't know, yeah, did you have any daily habits, that kind of winning goal, that winning help?
That's a great question. I think every athlete has their own package, as it were, but there are some real generic things. Rest is just as important as exercise. That is definitely number one. You know, when you're thinking about it, as an elite athlete, you're usually training 6 days a week, 1 day rest. For me, that was the case. And some of those days were training twice a day. So power naps became my thing. I'd have to have like a 20-minute power nap in between sessions, just so that I could refuel and get that rest, get the body to recover more than anything else, because that's what it's about, your muscle being able to recover. Definitely eating well and listening to the body. I think we as individuals know our bodies better than anybody else. And if your body is screaming out for rest, just rest, you have to listen to your body. You know, I worked alongside my athletic career part-time, so I think that was great for my mind, to take myself away from my sport, to reflect and look back at what I'm doing within my sport, and then focus on something else. So mindset, having that time out, meditation, all of that is great.
So talking about working at the same time, so were you did you have sponsorship, or how did you manage?
So I was working actually for the St Vincent and the Grenadines Tourist Board, and I did ask them if I could go part-time. This was before my first Olympic Games in '96, and they said, no, you can't go part-time, it's all or nothing. So I made that decision just to give up my job and just focus on my athletics. And that was pretty tough. I was just living off my savings, living off my parents. Luckily, I was still at home, so that was a great help. But then I did that for a year, and then I was approached by EDF Energy. Back then it was Seaboard, now it's EDF Energy. They wanted to support 5 athletes leading into the Olympics in 2000. And I was one of those athletes. And part of that package just wasn't about financial support. It was to give 5 of us an opportunity to work for them part-time. So you were able to do your sport and build on your career at the same time. And I was lucky enough, I was probably the only one out of the 5 who had some kind of work experience before. And I got the job. So I was with them for 19 years. Scary.
Easily done. Time goes by very fast.
Definitely.
That's why it's good to make good decisions way back, isn't it? All the young people that have tuned in today and that will be watching this in the future, it's those early decisions that make all the difference, isn't it? So I'm interested in, so you went to 4 different games, Olympic, Paralympics. What were the differences? Because obviously they're 4 years apart, aren't they? So that's over quite a period of time. So what do you think the differences were?
Oh my goodness. I get asked that question so often, and they were all so different for different reasons for me personally. Obviously, the first one was just, I was excited. It was my first Olympic Games. It was in America. It was everything that it was set out to be. And I had the opportunity as well to see Muhammad Ali, who came into the Olympic Village. So that was an experience in itself. In 2000, I had a great opportunity of training with Kathy Freeman leading into those championships. Now, she was the best in the world at that time. And in all honesty, I didn't realize how fit I was getting while I was training with her. But it was a huge lesson that I learned, was that, you know, we have all these celebrities that we see in the media all the time. We put these celebrities on pedestals. But just training with Kathy Freeman, I realized she's just like me. She put the same amount of work and effort into the training session, but it's up here. It's the mindset that makes the difference. And she was just phenomenal as an individual. We spoke about everything bar the Olympic Games. And of course, she was under immense pressure leading up to Sydney. So those games were special leading in. And of course, it was special to me because I made the final this time after not making the final in Atlanta. And coming 4th was disappointing. You don't get a medal for coming 4th. But again, those experiences I would never change. Of course, I would have loved to have got a medal, but that wasn't to be on that case. Now, 2004, again, an interesting lead up to those championships, I got injured. So I was out of the sport for a couple of years, no competition whatsoever. And again, the media, your critics write you off, say she's never going to come back. You know, she's had her time. But that determination in me, I said, I'm going to prove them wrong. And I worked extremely hard to, again, be selected for Great Britain. And those games, as you probably would have seen, some of you anyway, is Athens wasn't quite ready. It was almost like a building site when we arrived, completely different to Sydney, where the officials, all the volunteers were up to speed and the delivery was completely different. And I didn't get to the final there, but for me to come out of injury and still make an Olympic Games was an achievement in itself. And then another 4 years down the line is crazy when you look at it, 16 years. 2008, again, I was coming to probably the back end of my career now, not as fit as I would have been. I was still working, I was much older, taking longer to recover. So it was a lot tougher to try and make that team. But what I was told and asked is that, yes, I would be selected to be part of the relay squad. And if you remember what I said about the Commonwealth Games, they say history repeats itself. And I thought, this is telling me something here. So I went, but also more importantly, as a mentor for the younger athletes, because I've been to 3 Olympic Games previously, can share my experiences, keep everyone calm as much as possible, just give back my experiences the best I could. So 2008 was a bittersweet feeling. I was selected, I went, but I didn't get a run. Again, history repeats itself, but I did have a job to do, and that was to be a support for the younger athletes and the team.
Wow, fantastic. What a experience. So we've had a couple of questions around who inspired you. Who was your, who got you going? Where was that little spark of, you know, where you thought, okay, this is something I want to do?
How long have you got? My list is long. Number one has to be my sister. I think if she hadn't introduced me to athletics, I was seeing her with her spikes, I probably wouldn't have been introduced to athletics at all. My number one inspiration, I would say, is Jesse Owens. I think he was an amazing individual. The fact that he went to the Olympics when racism was rife, going to Berlin with Adolf Hitler being there, and still being able to win Olympic golds in all the events that he participated in is just phenomenal. That was an inspiration in itself. And also a young lady called Wilma Rudolph. Now, she was diagnosed with polio from a very young age, and she was told she'd never be able to walk, let alone run. She went to an Olympic Games and won a medal as well. So it's those people that have overcome adversity inspire me. Even the lady who is in Sainsbury's, who may not be feeling that well, but still comes to work. Those are the people that inspire me.
Ethan, who wants to know, how have you been managing in lockdown? So, you know, obviously everything's had to stop, especially sport.
Yes.
Have you been running marathons in your living room?
Not quite. Thanks for the question, Ethan. No, what I've done, usually in April, I go to St. Lucia to deliver boot camps for a resort. It's a healthy resort. They do sports activities. It's all around health and well-being. And unfortunately, I couldn't go this year. So what I thought, well, you know what, we're in lockdown. Let me give back my expertise to my neighbours. So I was delivering street workouts twice a week, 20 minutes, just get moving. And it wasn't about how fit you are. It was just getting out, community spirit, exercising. So I've had young children participate right up to older generations participating. So it's been bringing everyone together. That's kept me going. I'm used to working from home anyway, so that hasn't been too much of a big deal. But I must admit, we're now in week 13 of lockdown, and it's just like, I need to see people. But yeah, the only way I can best describe this is how I would have felt when I was injured and couldn't do what I wanted to do, and that was to get out and run and compete. And it's exactly the same. The things you want to do but can't do, and how I managed that was think about more so and focus on the things I can do and not the things that I can't. And I think that just generally helps the mindset be more positive. I love a positive quote. I send positive quotes to my team every Friday. So it sets them up for the weekend, and they can forget about what an awful week they've had and just inspire them to be the best that they can be, both physically and mentally.
As I wanted to know, did you participate in any other sports apart from athletics? What were you doing when you were 8 years old? That's when you started, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I love netball. I love basketball. But fundamentally, it's athletics was my thing. Even when I retired in athletics, I went back to netball, and oh my goodness, do I regret it? The knees, the change of direction, it wasn't like how I remember it when I was playing it when I was younger. But yeah, I love team sports. I love watching sports generally. It keeps me active and as a youngster. But I guess my prime event was, or sport should I say, was athletics. And with long legs, everyone expected me to be a high jumper, and I was like, no, I can just about get off the ground. Yeah, 400 sprints, straight lines, all good for me.
So did you say, so you're obviously coaching your neighbours, so were you you talked about a team, so are you coaching young people at the moment?
So I am a qualified athletics coach, and I always say that, I mean, that's a great thing to have if I need to use it. But I just do not have the time to have a training group, and I'd rather not do something than do it really badly and not give 110%. But I do go into schools, colleges, universities, businesses, and do one-off coaching sessions as one-off, similar to what I do in St. Lucia, because that's over 2 weeks. But to have a training group, being a coach is a full-time job. And I take my hat off to my coach, who's passed away, unfortunately, and all the other coaches in any sport. The commitment there, that all athletes sometimes take for granted. We shouldn't forget that, because without them, and it goes for teachers as well, because in essence, teachers are coaches as well. And I know I've been at school, sometimes when they're always nagging, it's for a reason. They see your potential. You need to pick that up, take with it and run with it. If my primary school teacher hadn't spotted that talent in me, I wouldn't be the person who I am today. So it's for a reason. They're not nagging.
So we had a question from Jeremiah about what you would say to inspire younger people. So I think you've spoken very much about that, but if there was just a few key sentences, or something, a focus that you would draw them to, what might it be?
It's simple. You've got to have fun in life. Sometimes life is too short. When you're young, you just enjoy whatever you're doing. I think that fundamentally is key, but that self-belief is so important in anything that you do. I believe everyone's got a talent. It may not be maths, it may not be science, it may not be sport. It's finding what your talent is and work with that and work on it. And we all have our weaknesses as well. Don't forget those. You still work on those weaknesses, but don't forget the core bit, and the most important bit are your strengths.
And you mentioned your role as a quality and diversity lead for UK Athletics. So generally, and obviously it's very relevant right now, but if you could speak a little bit about those issues surrounding Black Afro-Caribbean young people, and maybe their relationship with sport, because it's been a bit of a funny one, hasn't it, in the sense that it's definitely been something that Afro-Caribbean, Black young people have been very good at. They've been, used within sport and celebrated, but there are other sides to it that I don't know if you can enlarge on a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. So my role has two sides to it. One, I was employed to come in and embed our core values. So that's around behaviours, who we are as an organisation, and that's through everything that we do, from officials, coaches, athletes, and how we're perceived as a sport. So, respect. We've got respect, communication, integrity, equality, all those key words. It's all about how we behave as an organisation. So my job is to embed those into our policies, our practices, and how we are as an organisation. The other thing is we're aiming to achieve the equality standard in sport, which is something led by UK sport. Many sports are trying to achieve that higher standard, which is the advanced level. UK Athletics are at the intermediate level at the moment. We achieved that in 2013. So what that basically does, in a nutshell, to keep it simple and straightforward, because there's so many criteria linked to it, is literally us holding up that mirror and looking at ourselves and looking at those areas that we're not good at. So that could be around ethnicity, it could be around disability, all linked with those protected characteristics. And there's some great stuff that we're doing, so we have to celebrate those, but also identify the areas that we're not so good at. And that means collaborating with clubs, athletes, so we understand where we need to improve on. And one of those things, as you said, the topic of conversation now is around race. And it goes back, fundamentally, it goes back to those core behaviours. Do we respect one another? Are we mindful of the language that we use and the terminology that we use? Are we offending anyone? Even if the person doesn't even know it, they have to recognise that. So we talk about the unconscious bias quite a lot. People say things, don't realise they're offending. So it's really about the person calling them out and saying, actually, I'm not happy what you just said to me just then, because otherwise they would never know. They'll continue to do that. So it's that open conversation that we're trying to deliver within UK Athletics at the moment, so that we can be better. We're not perfect, but we recognise that, but we can do better as a sport. And as you said at the very beginning, sport is a great vehicle for inclusivity, and we have to leverage that.
I would like to know, and Isaiah, sorry, would like to know how they can get you into their school.
Oh, I'd love to come to your school, Isaiah. I would love it. So, to be honest, you can just contact me via Twitter, Instagram. Anna's got my email address in any case, or you can go through Speaker for Schools as well, who I'm signed up with. So it's entirely up to you. And inspirational speakers, forget that one.
So Jeremiah would like to be a professional sports person. Maybe at the end, Jeremiah, we could bring you back on, and you could have a little one-to-one with Donna just at the end. That would be a nice interchange.
Oh,
So Piers asked what you would like to achieve in the future. So it sounds like you're achieving an awful lot and doing a lot of great things, giving back as an athlete, as you said before. So yeah, what would you like to achieve in the future? Are you full-time working still?
I am full-time, absolutely, I still am. For me, you know, now I'm a retired athlete, it's about my own personal fitness, just to stay as healthy as possible. A lot of retired athletes tend to not want to do any of that anymore, but our bodies are in tune to stay as fit as we can. I will never, ever be how I was. I know that. So I'm embracing my new body shape, as it were. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. For me, the important thing for me as an athlete, and I feel it's my duty, is to give back my experiences to the next generation and be accessible like Jeremiah. If there's any questions, I always say it to any group of youngsters that I'm talking to, there's any question, there's no such thing as a silly question. If I have the answer, I will answer it. If I don't, I'm sure I know someone who can answer that. So yep, go for it. That's my view, is just to give something back to the community that have supported me over the years as a professional athlete.
Fantastic. I think you've ended that on a very, very wonderful, inspirational point that I think will resonate with everybody for quite a while. Thank you.